in tailoring your resume, use my framework or something else in addition to using the language of the job description. Also, I recommend you reorder the content of your resume. Usually things that are listed in a job description are in order of importance, usually. Reordering your resume to kind of mirror the order of the job description is good in terms of highlighting the things that are most important to them, and also to help them scan your resume more efficiently, and again, take some of that cognitive overhead off for them. And then think about what to leave off. If you don't have experience to fulfill an item that's on the job description, then it would be a good idea to address this in the cover letter, not the resume. You don't want to put things that you haven't done on your resume. Oh, Abigail had a question. What's the best way to do this without sounding overly loquacious? Oh, I'd love an example of what would be overly loquacious, because, well, maybe what I'll do is, this is a career changer example, but this, I don't know that I would call this an overly loquacious bullet point. I do think bullet points are the way to go with resumes rather than paragraphs, but especially in librarian and especially academic librarian jobs, some of your bullet points are going to be several lines long. So I think that's, I see a lot of CVs and resumes that that have 3-line bullet points or sub bullet points, and I use them myself. So I think you want to tighten up the language as much as possible, but don't worry about having like a long bullet point. And then Sarah said, word clouds are a great way to see words used the most. That's true. You can copy a job description and put it into Wordle or another word cloud program, and see what words they are using the most. So that's a really good tip from Sarah. So thank you, Sarah. Basically, this gap that I identified here, this candidate has done this thing. So I would rework this or I would advise Electra to rework this in their own language to make a bullet. And then notice that this worked with technical services managers. Let's see where that goes, that's way down here. That's way down here. So I would see if I could work something like that into this most recent job. And so that it would appear, closer up to the top of the resume, and really just reorder those things. For anything that you have a good anecdote, if there's like a project that you did that's outstanding, or that really illustrates nicely one of these primary responsibilities, write up your anecdote here. And you can either integrate that into your cover letter, which we'll talk about in just a moment, or you could also save that in your back pocket for the interview process, because those things come in really handy. So all of this work that you're doing in the application process will yield many times over for the interview process when you're doing a phone screen, and when you're doing in-person interviews. And the more that the stories that you have that go with some of the things that you've done get locked into your consciousness, the more easily they'll roll off your tongue in an interview situation. So somebody asked, how many pages max should a resume aim to be? A resume should be no longer than it needs to be. There are many different schools of thought on this. If you are applying, oh, actually, I think I might have a slide. Let me see if I have a slide on this. Do I? Oh, I did. I took that one off. I used to have a length advice here, but basically CVs for academic jobs just get longer and longer as your career grows, and that is okay. I think mine right now is 5 pages, but if you're early in your career, there's no reason to have a 5-page CV. If you are applying for a corporate librarian job, I would recommend that you try to keep it to 2 pages max and really focus on streamlining your bullets. And I could do a whole nother workshop on that. But I think that the corporate world is more into 1- and 2-page resumes. Certainly MBA programs always advise their MBA candidates, even the very experienced ones, to keep things down to 1 page. Somebody is asking, what about a federal resume? And I am really sorry, but I don't know. That is a really good question. Veronica is asking if I'm using CV and resume interchangeably. There are differences between CVs and resumes. Really, a CV is meant to capture your entire career history, academic output. And if you're applying for academic librarian jobs, you're probably going more for the CV. If you're going for other kinds of jobs, and I'm seeing USA Jobs has very specific requirements. I have some info to help. Thank you. So that will be in the chat. Yes, another good question. I love these questions. Sarah is also saying to use the federal job description words exactly. I would 100% agree with that, because especially as you get into federal and corporate jobs, they're often using algorithms to weed out candidates. So if you don't have those buzzwords, you might just get filtered out by the bot, and you don't want that. Flora asks, for those of us of a certain age, how far back should we go? What if the most relevant jobs were some time ago? There are different schools of thought on this, but one option, and I have helped people do this, and this is kind of a one-on-one consulting kind of thing that I would recommend that you get help with, would be to go for a skills-based resume rather than a chronologically based resume or CV that really highlights the skills and accomplishments that you want to highlight at the top, front and center, and then has a more abbreviated work history down below. So to really highlight the most relevant experience and take a little bit of emphasis off of the dates. This can be, because it's not as often used, it can be a little jarring for search committees to look at a resume formatted that way. But really, it's, if you really think that that's what puts your work history in the best light, then maybe that is your best shot. Sarah's saying that's a great suggestion. We've seen a few skills-based resumes, and the best ones really stand out because they show us exactly what we want. Oh, awesome feedback, Sarah. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, if it's done well, that can really, really be helpful, whether or not it's to deprioritize how far back some of the experience went. Excellent questions. What chronological styles should you put experience or education first, or does it matter? Generally, for academic jobs, I would recommend to put your education first, because the academic jobs are the ones that say must have this degree. So start off with that degree, get it out of the way. And for other types of jobs that are not academic jobs, the experience can go first. Yes, yes. So for public libraries, so if the public library job requires the degree, I would still put the education first. It doesn't take up much space. You can get to your experience really quickly. If the job requires the degree, just put the degree at the top and then get to your experience. Yeah, so another question, do you recommend a few sentences summary of oneself first at the top? That can be helpful, especially if you need to tie together some disparate experience. Another way to do that is to omit things from the resume, but then you have to address gaps. So if you've decided to include some of your career meanderings into your resume or CV, one way to really tie it all together is to have a summary at the top. I wouldn't put an objective, actually. I think that I'm responding to these chats as they're coming in. So yes, the objective can be covered in the cover letter. What you want is going to be addressed in the cover letter rather than in the resume or CV. I would not put objectives, but I think that a summary is fine. Can I leave out dates entirely is another question. I have not seen a resume entirely devoid of dates. And I do think that some dates are important to establish a history of experience, and to be able to, when at some point someone wants to do employment verification, dates are going to be necessary. So I don't think you can leave dates off of your resume entirely. But I do think that there are ways, such as doing a skills-based resume, to highlight it less. Now we are getting to the cover letter, and some of the questions are starting to get into cover letter land, so this is perfect. In the cover letter, that is your opportunity to tell your story. You're going to use your cover letter to fill in gaps and make connections. Here's a quote from Joyce Lane Kennedy, who wrote Cover Letters for Dummies. She said, "The resume focuses on you and the past. The cover letter focuses on the employer and the future. Tell the hiring professional what you can do to benefit the organization in the future." This, I believe, is true, but I also think that there may be reasons to expound on something that was in your work history, but do it in a way that you're tying it to what you can do for that organization in the future. So some cover letter basics. If possible, address the hiring manager and or search committee chair by name, or if the chair of the search committee, or if it says in the job description who this position is reporting to, go to the website for that organization, find out who that person is, look them up, look up their history, do a little research. From what I can glean of this person, have they published or presented on anything that's exciting to me? Yeah, research like a librarian. Yes, Sarah, exactly. So, do your due diligence, research the people who are on the search committee, address them by name in the cover letter. We have another question. If you're applying for a position in your organization and you know the person by first name, how should you address the letter? I would still be formal. I would recommend that you use the formal greeting, regardless of whether you know the person by their first name. This is still going to be a formal process. Yeah, good. I'm glad I'm confirming how you felt. Yes, I agree with you. Also, in cover letters, I recommend that this is your place to tell a story. This is a place to do paragraphs rather than bullets. The only exception that I would give to that is for corporate jobs. I think that corporate jobs, you can start with a nice intro paragraph and then say, these are some ways that I can help you, and have a bulleted list of things that you can do to help them. But I didn't really see a lot of you going for corporate jobs. If any of you are going for corporate jobs, feel free to email me if you have questions, or reach out or in the chat. But paragraphs rather than bullets in your cover letters. And again, address any gaps between the job requirements and the resume, ideally with parallel or transferable skills or experience. Or maybe this is the place where you figure out, ooh, this is a place where I really have a gap. What can I start doing now, today, tomorrow, next week? Can I register for an online workshop on such and such skill so that I can add that workshop to my resume even if I haven't done this in the real world? Something like that. Add the workshop to the resume and then talk about it in the cover letter. So yeah, we're talking about cover letters. So that's what I'd recommend for your cover letter basics. I've created a little Madlib for you that you can adapt for your own purposes. But most of the cover letters that I've submitted for jobs in the last 10 years have started with a sentence like this: I am extremely interested and wish to be considered for X role at Y institution. Through my experiences doing A, B, and C at this place and that place and this other place, I have developed skills and interests that make me an excellent candidate for this position. Yes, I'm seeing some questions come in. What's the suitable length for academic and or public library job cover letters? Oh, and Elise, thank you. Yes, please post my Berkeley email address. So the suitable length for academic and or public library job cover letters. For an academic job cover letter, I would say no more than 2 pages if possible, and not tiny, tiny font. Be kind to people's eyes. So I think 2 pages is fine. I wouldn't go over 2 pages. Your CV, if it's for an academic job, is likely going to be for 3, depending upon where you are in your career. For those of you who are starting out your library career, your CV right now might only be 2 pages, and your cover letter might be a page, and that is totally fine. As you gain more and more experience, your CV will grow probably to 4, 5, 6 pages, and your cover letter will probably be about 2 pages.